Goedemorgen. Ik open de vergadering voor de vaste commissie voor Defensie en als vervolgcommissie de commissie voor Buitenlandse Zaken. Op de agenda staat de humanitaire situatie in Hawija. We hebben buitenlandse gasten, dus ik zal overgaan naar het Engels. Good morning. Welcome to the Standing Committee for Defense and the Standing Committee for Foreign Affairs. Today we will discuss, we have a roundtable on humanitarian aid regarding Hawija. We have 3 guests. I will shortly introduce them. Ms. Azim, she is author of the report After the Strike of PAX. On the call we have Mr. Abdul Karim Al-Bayati, director of the Ashur Foundation. And also on the call we have Ms. Tripp. She is director of Air Wars. Sorry. I will start with giving our guests 5 minutes to give their opening statement, and then we can go to the members of parliament for their questions. And I will start with Ms. Azim. Ms. Azim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. I would like to start off by saying something that the mayor of Hawija said to me in January of this year. When someone commits a mistake, they have to come back and apologize. No one has been to Hawija from the Dutch government to actually offer a sincere apology to the 85 civilians confirmed dead, and the 125 children who were below 12 at the time who were directly injured as a result of the airstrike. And these are estimated numbers that we have, and these are very conservative numbers that we have because we haven't researched the entire population. Apology needs to be meaningful, and apology needs to be in a way that is suitable to the civilians who were harmed. As the compensation, as the Commission Zorgdrager also reported, that the compensation projects were too little and too late. We also have a briefing on that already in the folder and already on the website. 10 years on, the suffering still remains, if not, in some cases, has been amplified. I would also like to ask, a couple of years ago, the Ministry of Defense said it would provide medical aid to children who were under 12 and under at the time of the airstrike. We here have a list of 125 children who were injured, but we're yet to hear an update. Again, not to go over the numbers again, but 6,000 buildings were damaged, again, to various extents. Some completely destroyed. The battle damage assessment of the coalition estimates 136 completely destroyed and 554 damaged. By 6,000, we mean damage to varying degrees. The airstrike caused an earthquake measuring 4.2 on the Richter scale and felt over 60 kilometers away. So that just gives you the extent of how powerful that airstrike was. 1,200 shops were destroyed. At least 1,900 people were unemployed as a direct result of this airstrike. Flour mill, textile mill, 5 ice factories, 3 big brick factories, 6 schools completely destroyed, and another 9 damaged. I would also like to talk to you about Atiya Hamad Abdullah, who, having seen the airstrike, having been a part of it, having had an injured grandson, Omar, whose case most of us have been followed, who was severely burned, has tried to commit suicide twice because he cannot deal with the amount of trauma that he saw on that one single night. I would like to talk about Kurdi Fadil, whose 3-month-old daughter died as a result of shrapnel hitting her head because of the airstrike. I would talk about Abdullah Rashid Saleh, who was an IDP at the time in Hawija, escaping ISIS from Salahuddin, taking refuge in Hawija, and in a single night lost 7 members of his family, the youngest one, Mahmoud, being a 1.5 years old. I would talk about Fahima Daud Saleh, who lost a daughter whose son is handicapped completely and therefore cannot provide any sort of, and therefore their household does not have any sorts of livelihoods, 10 years later still. Suhaila Qasim, whose 12-year-old daughter also died on the night because of shrapnel. We've interviewed 119 people, but we have a database of another 266 who are waiting to be interviewed. because for us, this was not a fact-finding mission, but for us, it was to show the damage that is there and the damage that is still there 10 years later. I would also like to talk about Reem, who was 4 at the time, who has deformities in her hand due to shrapnel. Again, this could have been avoided had she gotten medical care immediately. Hassan, who was 12 at the time and 22 now, fully disabled as a result of the airstrike. Nazar, which is quite interesting because Nazar also means sight, who lost his eyesight, who was 12 at the time of the airstrike. Hassan, 7, who also lost his right eye, and Muslim, who was 1 year old and has brain atrophy. Again, there are 3 things that the civilians of Hawija have been asking for time and yet again. The first being a meaningful apology where somebody from the Dutch government actually goes to them and apologizes in a meaningful manner. The second being individual compensation as well as community level compensation in a way that is meaningful to them, in a way that suits their needs. And both of these need to be done with proper communication with local authorities as well as civilians. And the third, as a sign, as a gesture of goodwill, to partner up to have a twin city program with the Dutch city, because the Netherlands also has a history of reconstruction after the Second World War, to teach Hawija how to do that. Immediate needs would be health, both mental and physical. Immediate needs would also be social cohesion, because the community as a whole, Hawija, needs to heal and to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Azim, for your introduction. And then I will give the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Abdul Karim Al-Bayati. The floor is yours.
Okay, hi everyone, and thank you for let us take this opportunity to describing the humanitarian situation in Hawija. This is Engineer Muhammad. Muhammad Abdul Karim. I am the Executive Director of Ashur Foundation for Relief and Development. I am one of the person who working on this case since 2022 with support of Pax for Peace. Hawija district is belong to the Kirkuk governorate. I am originally from Kirkuk, and day by day, since we started to work in this case from 2020 till this day, every day we receiving a call, have meetings with these survivors, with these families affected by the incident. Even this time, maybe 1.5 hour, we cannot describe all the suffering that happened at that night, because even what's that PAX reported, and we are also reported, the suffering of these people, we cannot describe the suffering of these people, because if some person go to Hawija and sitting with these families, each family, each member have a different story, a different suffering, especially after 10 years of the incident that happened in 2015. We are still as people working in the humanitarian sector, also for the victims and families affected by this incident at this night. As Saba mentioned, more than 85 persons had died, more than 500 persons injured, and more than 6,000 buildings and houses damaged and affected, even the governmental building, shops, houses. There are many of the affected in the different fields and sectors, in the educational side, and the health side, and the agriculture side, and the economic sides. All of these affected, and after 10 years, we didn't see any real action from the Dutch government. This is I only transfer all the information and the feedback from these families, because we have the opportunity to transfer all of their suffering, what happened to them. We did more than 100 interviews with these families and listening to their suffering in deep details. After this long period, we didn't see any real action from the Dutch government on this incident. We see one of the positive points, but I think it needed to complete and continue this point, that the Dutch government apologized. But this apologize is not enough because only they invited the mayor of Hawija to go to the Arbil. Yeah, for some reason mentioned that related to security, but it's not the person and the people cannot convince on this reason. People needed to someone from the senior positions and the Dutch government go and sitting with them and saying sorry and apologize for them. I think it's easy step. It's not like a hard step because after more than 85 had died, affected these families, needed to continue the Dutch government plan and to support these families, to apologize for them, support their livelihoods, their economic, working on the rehabilitation of some of the construction in the building. Yeah, as you know, the Dutch government grant 4.5 million for do some working and rehabilitation in that state, but it's not enough, and this amount didn't targeted the real and the right victims who are affected. They are working in another area and didn't targeted the people who are really affected. And also, this is a little budget, is not like consider 5% of the damage that happened to these families. Not even, because currently many of the females, from the males, from the children suffering from the health issue. There is no, because as you know, there is secondary explosion happening, and there are many of the chemicals while storage. And this is started currently. If you go to the hospitals in Hawija, they started to report it, some of the families, and also there is started after these 10 years, the secondary side effects, health effects started to appear, that this is people started to having a cancer. The percentage of cancer in this stage started to go up, and all of this reported by the health department in Hawija. An additional one of the gap point that happened, that the delay in acknowledgement and response from the Dutch government. An additional, also, as I mentioned, adequate compensation approach. Currently, the people have many requests, but we are working with them day by day, give them update. This is what happened. This is the progress. But I think it's so long time, after 10 years, that the Dutch government can maybe come and do something for these families.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdul Karim Al Bayati, for your introduction. And then I will go to our third guest, Ms. Tripp, for her opening remarks.
Hello, thank you all for having me, and thanks for this important roundtable. So maybe just to put a little bit of context, so I'm the Executive Director of Air Wars. We're a casualty reporting organisation. We work around many different conflicts. Our job is essentially to provide some clarity when it comes to the chaos of an information environment in the immediate aftermath of any strike, and kind of push through what's often the kind of mis and disinformation space to provide some kind of reliable and clear reporting of what's happening. So as Air Wars, we kind of work airstrike by airstrike. We've worked in Iraq, in Syria, Ukraine, Libya, and essentially we kind of pull together the, who was killed, where they were, what they were doing, and kind of build a permanent and public record. And then we make this accessible, so for policymakers, for legislators such as yourselves, for journalists, human rights groups, lawyers, and things like that. In the war against ISIS, more than 40% of the cases that were conceded eventually by the US-led coalition originated as Air Wars referrals. And so we've kind of spent a long time kind of like doing all of that work at scale, particularly in this conflict. Just going quickly to Hawija, so out of about 1,500 incidents of civilian harm, so 1,500 airstrikes that led to allegations of civilian deaths, only 4 have more than 70 casualties attached, which was the kind of lowest estimate civilian death toll that we had for the Hawija strike. As you've heard, it's likely much, much higher than that. In Hawija, we were documenting civilian harm reports almost immediately. So information, may not have come through the military's own mechanisms and their own after-action reports and battle damage assessments, but within 24 hours, we had local journalists on the scene. There were civilians themselves who were in the vicinity, kind of like, talking about the strike, local organizations who were already talking about this. So, and as we've heard, PACS and their partners were carrying out then extensive research in the years after the strike to kind of put more detail on those initial reports. I just want to say that, the information environment surrounding the Hawija strike is really not that different to many strikes that have come before that or indeed afterwards. The fact that the information wasn't taken seriously isn't an isolated event. I've outlined this in the position paper and can answer, more questions to this, but there is this consistent blind spot in militaries when it comes to detecting and making sense of civilian harm allegations in the immediate aftermath of strikes on the part of militaries. So I'll just say, kind of to wrap up, this strike remains one of the deadliest incidents that we recorded in the war against ISIS, but is really a kind of acute example of systemic failures when it comes to detecting civilian harm in the immediate aftermath of airstrikes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tripp, for your introduction. And then I will give the floor to the members of parliament. I would ask you to whom you will address your question to also mention that so that we know who will give the answer. And then I will start with Mr. Olger van Dijk, member of New Social Contracts.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. Chair, and thanks to Mrs. Azim, Mrs. Tripp, and Mr. Albayati for your stories today. When I think that's what needed, and I'd like to say as a start that thanks for your introductions, but for sure this House of Representatives takes this very serious, and that's why we talk with you today, and we will talk again with the Minister, of course, of Defense later on. That said, I have a question, I think, to Mrs. Azim, author of the After the Strike report. And I think I start with what I read in the paper when it comes to the involvement of local, also civil society partners that other than we were informed, they aren't sufficient involved in the projects. And perhaps can you elaborate some more on the differences? And I read that the union wasn't involved, but also not commissions of civilians, and what you would which recommendation you would make for the future.
Ms. Azim.
Thank you for your question, and a very good one, definitely. So last time I was there, when the projects were announced, I was there in Hawija 2021, 22, 23, and the latest visit was with Mohammed actually in January of this year. In January of this year, we did see the IOM shops being rebuilt. Some were rehabilitated, some were built from scratch. Also in the paper mentioned. When we asked people who were working there, they had no idea where the shops came from. When we asked the union personnel there who were in the industrial district, they had no idea. Some of the people had an idea because they said some people from the Netherlands came and told us. And from what we gathered, what we deduced, it was when the committee Zorgdrager visited Hawija. But the communication that these projects were from the Dutch government as a form of compensation, this was never communicated. This was also the NGO coordinator at the mayor's office. He did know because, of course, in his job, in his position, he is supposed to know. But every time he would have a meeting, because there is also a Hawija coordination group, when he would be present in the meeting and he would ask questions, he would be asked to not ask questions because he's merely there as an observer. So the top officials do know it came from IOM, UNDP, and it was compensation from the Dutch, but the civilians do not know. At the same time, when last we interviewed the current mayor as well as the municipality department who was involved with IOM for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of the shops, as well as the electricity department, which was involved with UNDP, they've all said that we have been compensated as a government because the land of the industrial area the land belongs to the municipality department, and the municipality department actually rents out the shops to the shopkeepers. So they have been compensated for, but the civilians have not been compensated for. At the same time, the shops have been rehabilitated, yes, but there are already cracks forming in the foundations. So they did get, and this is from the municipality department directly, they did get clearance from the mine action group that it was cleared for all mines and unexploded ordinances. They also got clearance that there is no harmful radiation, but they did not get a technical clearance. So that means engineering-wise, this was not properly constructed. There is no drainage system. A lot of the shops haven't been operational, and already there are cracks forming. So that also gives an idea of the state of affairs in a nutshell, but also the same people who were, representatives who are sort of compensated, also saying civilians aren't compensated, but also what about the damage, the goods and the whatever material they had in the shops, that was also destroyed. So how are they going to be compensated for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I will give the floor to Ms. Hanneke van der Werf of D66.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask a question for Mr. Abdul Karim Al-Bayati, because recently footage from the Dutch F-16s has taken the day after the bombing was recovered. I was wondering, what impact has this had in Hawija?
Mr. Abdul Karim Al-Bayati?
Sure. I think you mentioned about the night of the incident, right?
Yes, it's the footage taken the day after the bombing was recovered.
Regarding that date, as you know, currently the area was under control of ISIS, and many of the people noticed that maybe there is a flight because it's like, for example, they know it's maybe belong to the international coalition that they maybe attacked Daesh, but at another area. And as they mentioned, and as a normal routine in that area, because it was summer and the people are sleeping on the roof, and they mentioned after the midnight they started to hearing some of the high voices from there's a flight at this area, and suddenly they see that there is a huge bombing that happened at that night, and they didn't have any idea or aware about what's happened. It's an earthquake. It's as they mentioned that they didn't know what is the source of this bombing. Only they see that their children, their families start to fly in the air. And after that, it was, as I mentioned, the area was under the control of ISIS. They started to take their family affected who are still on the life to the hospital. But some of these hospitals, especially in Hawija, some of them destroyed by the airstrike. And part of the another general hospital that Hawija didn't receive them to treat them, only treated some of the ISIS family. Therefore, they forced it to travel to another governorate like Nainawa hospitals for these families. At the morning, they come, and as I know, if you see some of the photo and the picture or some of the video on the YouTube that published at that period, that there is a huge bombing with a huge hole that happened at that area. It was it's an industrial area. There is a shops. In additional, the targeted neighborhood targeted is the industrial area, but there is this according to the old design of this city, the industrial area was surrounded by three neighborhoods: Al Yarmouk neighborhoods, Hattin neighborhoods, and Al Askari neighborhoods. All of these neighborhoods also affected. The houses of this affected. In additional, one of the point during the ISIS conflict. Many of the families displaced from the Salahuddin Governorate and came to Hawija and basing in this industrial area where there's factories and there are shops. Therefore, there is a high number of family affected, especially in industrial area, even it's a night. But these families was hosting at this area, and therefore, when happened this bombing, they are affected because the industrial area was many of the displaced families from Salahuddin Governorate and another village around Hawija were basing there.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Azim would also like to add something.
Thank you. From what we know, 2 days before this video was released, the Dutch embassy in Baghdad got in touch with the mayor of Hawija and shared that this would be released in parliament and in such a manner. I know local media, very local media on Facebook picked it up. But within Hawija, this was really not picked up because, again, the video itself was more on the strike. They already have footage of what happened after the strike on the ground. So for them, this is also a bit like, okay, it doesn't really matter. The damage is done. What next? As in, what do we do with this, right? So it's more the damage is done. We saw it from our eyes. There's also satellite imagery showing the damage. So this really doesn't add much to their suffering.
Thank you. Then I will give the floor to Mr. Elian, member of the VVD.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for participating in this conversation with us. I have a question regarding an apology. I think most of you mentioned this. And I'm trying, because I can imagine an apology can make a difference, especially for victims and relatives. Could you elaborate, any of you? So you have apology and to apologize. Those are two different, can be two different things. So what should be the essence? What should be the core of an apology, and who should make the apology? Could you elaborate a bit on this? Because I can understand it's very important also for trying to cope with what happened.
I think the question is to all of you three. So shall I start with Ms. Tripp?
I think I'll defer to my colleagues who are more in touch on that situation, perhaps.
Thank you. Then I will refer to Mr. Abdul Karim Al-Bayati.
Okay, thank you. Regarding, as I mentioned, that many of the people asking for the apologize and apology, it's two different things. The first one is like is emotional things that they asked for the senior people from the Dutch government. Came to Hawija like a delegation from, for example, the Minister of Defense or the Prime Minister to visit them, not like maybe ambassador or because they mentioned that the Dutch government did this mistake, and they had at least one of the senior position. What I mentioned also, maybe Sabah will mention, is that this is the request, and they only working to transfer what they are requesting. They are requesting to people from the Dutch government on the senior level who have to come to Hawija and apologize from them, sitting with them, listen with them, and say to them they apologize as face to face, not like the Dutch embassy did in Iraq. That only invited they invited the mayor and invited the families, but it's a cultural thing that in Iraq, for example, if you did a mistake for one, you have to come to him and say that apologize, not invited him to your base and to say they apologize. This is a cultural thing, and it's so hard for them, especially because they invited these families to Erbil. There is a checkpoint between Erbil and Iraqi government and Kurdistan region government. This is checkpoint if you are from the Arab people, because Hawija is Arab people. You have to get the security clearance, so you have to access to this is Kurdistan region, and it's sometimes there is a crowded for more than 3 or 4 hours. and even they have a suffering, and you have to like make additional suffering, make them travel for more than 200 kilometers to Erbil to say they apologize from not like through like the Minister of Defense to through online, not an person. This is a first thing they needed. They need someone from, as I mentioned, the position that they suggested or mentioned to us. The second one, they needed like a physical apologize that doing the individual compensation for these families. This is one of, I think, one of the case that also they are working in the court on these cases. Yep. And additional working to restore their economic development, their economic issues, rehabilitating their affected houses, because some of the families have income and they can and they could rehabilitate their houses, but many of them they are still they didn't do anything for their houses. In addition, as Saba mentioned, the shops is owned by the municipality, and it's not belong to these families, these workers, because they needed like to provide them and support them with the physical things, with the equipment, and additional on the health sector, because as I mentioned, many of the cancer cases started to currently since 2021 started to appear in these families, and they need, as you know, dealing or treating the cancer in Iraq is so expensive. There is no one supported them till now, even the NGO working in the health sectors. And additional on the educational sector, yeah, they needed, as I mentioned, also for the twinning. For the cities, between a city from Dutch government, from Netherlands, and with Hawija, to transfer all of the knowledge and experience among this city, because as I mentioned, the mistakes happened since 10 years, and I think we needed, or maybe the Dutch government needed to have a quick action, because many of these, some of these victims or survivors start to die. Because they are still suffering from the health issue and no treated. For example, if we came back to the data that we are collected at the 2020, as I mentioned, more than 85,000 had been died. But currently, during also collecting the data, one of the example things, our team called the families to have a meeting with the household, the head of the household, and we agreed with him on the date during 2020. But the second day, their family called us and mentioned he is died. Yeah. Also, as I mentioned, still now there are in each like month there is one of, or month, 3 months, there is some of these victims are died. Therefore, I think we need, the Dutch government have to do a quick action to address, not like take. Currently, we have the Dutch government mentioned that we are responsible after 10 years. I think if they start to planning to do some things for these families after 10 years, I think no one of these survivors, the 500 families, will stay on the life. Especially they are living in the hard condition, economic things, health things, social issues. I think, yep, as I mentioned, we are here, especially me, because I am on the ground, and day by day I heard from them, many of the sad stories that happened to them. There is, as you know, currently after the USAID cut the fund, there is, even before the US has cut the funding, there is no funding, and targeting these people. Many of the organization, NGO, also Dutch organization working in Hawija, no one targeting these people who are affected. I don't know what is the reason. Yeah, this is, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I will go to Ms. Azim.
As Mohammed said, one is a verbal apology where somebody from the Dutch government, a representative high enough, should go to Hawija and apologize to all the civilians there. but also make commitments. As in we've seen lots of researches on transitional justice on the importance of that apology and the importance of how it needs to be culturally appropriate to the people harmed, to the civilians harmed. So therefore, as what we've seen from the civilians, they want somebody to physically go to Hawija, somebody from the Dutch government, a high enough representative to offer that apology. But considering 10 years have already passed, they're also saying that an apology without meaningful commitments behind it is an empty apology. It does help in healing, but there need to be strong commitments made. And rather than kind of putting words through my mouth, I would highly encourage whoever goes to Hawija to engage with the civilians, to engage with the mayor's office, to engage with the Traders Association and ask them, what does it mean to you? Because again, me saying that would be rather neo-colonial. So let's ask the civilians what an apology means to them and what it looks like to them.
Thank you. Then I will turn to Mr. Dijk, who's member of the Socialist Party.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and your participation. I have a specific question about women and children. And I can imagine that under the humanitarian situation in Hawija, they suffered the most. And my question is, could you tell us something about their situation right now and what must be done?
Your question is, I think, to Ms. Azim. You were looking to Ms. Azim. Ms. Azim.
The situation is quite dire. As in Hawija, even before the airstrike, before anything, was a fairly conservative area where women are not seen publicly as much. They don't really have the space. We don't have the data because pre-strike data does not exist, but from the Women's Center we visited, we've observed, and these are anecdotal evidence, right, that there has been an increase in gender-based violence against women, particularly given the economic situation is so bad. People who are business owners are now trying and struggling to find daily wages. That has an impact on the family, and therefore they take their frustration out on the family, the women being the first one to bear that brunt. The second thing that was also mentioned in this report is it's an indirect impact that we've seen, that the amount of teachers in Hawija has reduced drastically. And given that a lot of business owners or people who had regular employment do not have employment anymore, that also means that the cases of child labor has increased. So that means they're skipping school. If there are not enough teachers. They're skipping school also to make sure that they can earn a living just to feed their families, even if it's a piece of bread, one meal a day. So this is the impact that we've seen on children, that we've seen on women. Women especially, when it comes to livelihood, they're in Iraq, traditionally they're also not the primary breadwinner. And in cases where the breadwinner is either injured or dead, there's also that impact. Like the person I mentioned, Fahima Daoud, her husband is dead. Her son, who was able to carry the family, is now, it could have been treatable, but is now permanently disabled and therefore unable to get any form of livelihood for the family. So that has more of a negative impact on female-headed households or on child-headed households. And now there's also an increase in female-headed households and child-headed households as a result. This is what we've observed in this research. There's probably a lot more data, but this is what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I will turn back to Mr. Olge van Dijk for a second round of questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I've got a question to Mr. Al-Bayati from the Ashur Iraqi Foundation. And I read your recommendations, and I've got a question concerning recommendation number 5 over the enhanced support from NGOs and local NGOs. And, well, you sum up some possibilities, like rebuild livelihoods, provide psychological care, etc. And I think the message today is not to point out from The Hague or what kind of projects we should choose if it comes to further compensation. But perhaps you could say some more what you think is needed most, and also the process to, pick projects.
Mr. Al-Bayati.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, regarding the recommendation number 4, the number 5 regarding the enhancing support, because why I mentioned that the support has to be through like ING or local organization who are working on the ground, not to the, I didn't mention to the UN agencies, because they, I would like to clearly to give some clarify regarding this point, because the UN agency here in when they are working and receiving a fund in Iraq, they are following their strategy. Well, they have to this strategy, the annual strategies. Yeah, this is what happened with the 4.5 million that the Dutch government give to the IOM and the UNDP. But the INGO and the local organization who are working on the ground, yeah, they can working on according to the recommendation of the donors, where they have to target it, not like the UN agencies. As I mentioned, they are following their strategy and their policy. I think one of the main sectors, if we needed to work them immediately, the livelihood things, the livelihood sector, because many of the families lost their fathers, and currently the women are working, and also the children working. And also one of the points that we highlighted during this period after the Dutch incident, that increasing in the percentage of the child labor, because they leave their schools to support their mothers and the working. Therefore, I think one of the thing delivering livelihood programs in the sector of the vocational training, support them, build their skills, and additional grant them for the to like open their business or improving or developing their businesses or shop they have it. Especially Hawija is agriculture area, and they more we can working on this sector, especially in the agriculture, even also other businesses and labors works there, like because it's an industrial area, many of the shops and the jobs there. But I think one of the main thing, yeah, if we targeted this program, maybe one of the children can come back to the schools. And additional, we can support these women, and they can work and like have their business. They can manage or address a small things of their suffering. The second thing, the psychosocial issues, because as I mentioned, no, we didn't see on the ground any ING or local organization who are, or some of the local organization working on the support for the delivering some of the PSS. PSS sessions for these children, for these families, because as you know, the trauma that they have it at that night, they still, some people, especially the children, mention that when we are currently sleeping, we still see some of the bad dreams regarding what happened in the incident. And also this is affected on their personality of these children, because no one sitting with them, because the families and the mother working, and these children forced to work to bring income for these families. No one listening to them, support them, providing them providing them with the PSS sessions, like opening a case management for each children, working to address, because as you know, if any person have a trauma or psychosocial issues, you have to open a case management for him, working to address what is needed, developing a plan to address, especially the children and also even the women. I think the livelihood program and the psychosocial support is really needed at this stage. Also, as mentioned, sorry, regarding the health support for the children who are affected, and also for the women and some person who have the cancer currently due the side effect of the pumping. Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. And then I will go to Ms. van der Werf.
Thank you. I've got a question for Mrs. Azim, because I wasn't sure if I understood you correctly the first time. You said that the mayor of Hawija was informed 2 days before the new footage was found, did you mean he was informed 2 days before it was shown in Parliament? Okay, so it wasn't during the week the footage was found.
No, it was 2 days before it was shown to Parliament. So the Dutch embassy in Baghdad got in touch with him to tell him that they were showing this video in Parliament 2 days from now, so, and then on the 15th, so he was contacted on the 13th of April. And then the second was he was also informed about this session.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So if I understand it correctly, he wasn't informed in the week the footage was found and the week the newspaper article came out and the Parliament spoke about it?
Not that I know of, no. We haven't received any communication from him on that. We did receive communication on when it was to be shown to Parliament and this session.
Mr. Elian, for your second question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To follow up on the question of my colleague, Mr. Van Dijk, regarding the compensation, and I'm also, while I'm speaking, looking at the position papers you have sent us. Thank you for sending those. Do I understand you all correctly that with regard to individual or group compensation, collectively, so the people prefer individual compensation? Do I understand correctly that compensation on a collective level can be successful, but one condition is that it has to go through local projects and that the local participation is crucial in making this successful? Do I understand your, because it's quite important, I think, also for the debate here. So it can be successful, but not in the way it is proposed now.
So the impression, not the impression, but what the interviewers have said is individual compensation is the first priority. In tandem, so together with community level compensation, because a lot of community level infrastructure was also destroyed. But individual compensation trumps all. So there's no question of either or, there's a question of, but the answer is both. And I'm sorry, but if we're not listening to the fact that that civilians are demanding an apology and individual compensation, then we're really not listening to the civilians again.
Okay, thank you. Then I will go to Mr. Dijk.
Thank you. I have a question to Air Wars, to Ms. Tripp. You wrote a report with PAX in 2020, Seeing Through the Rubble. One of the recommendations was avoid the use of explosive weapons with wide area effects in populated areas. Does Dutch defense make regular use of such projects, such weapons?
Ms. Tripp.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, the Netherlands has now signed on to this treaty, or kind of political declaration rather, on the use of explosive weapons in populated areas. But yes, I mean, all allies during the war against ISIS were using using wide area effect weapons in populated areas. There's, like, you can kind of go into the coordinates that were released by the Dutch Ministry of Defense, where they kind of sort of set out which weapons were used and then categorized each coordinate by sort of urban and rural locations. And we kind of had a back and forth with the Ministry of Defense on particularly what that meant. But yes, kind of short answer is yes.
Thank you. I'm looking to my colleagues. Do we have additional questions? Who has? Mr. Van Dijk.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Albayati ended response to my earlier question with medical care to kids. And I read also in the PAX paper on that earlier on it was said that it should the medical care. There should be an investigation if it's needed, and perhaps. Well, I'm simply curious what's done already. Are there any figures on kids that are still need medical care, for example, and what is done before? And I think it's the question to Mrs. Azim.
Ms. Azim.
Thank you. So we were requested by the Ministry of Defense to be very clandestine about getting figures, because we also didn't, or the Dutch government did not want to make false promises. And they asked us if we could, and this was done together with Mohammed and his organization, if we could get an estimate of the children who were 12 at the time of the airstrike, even though if you go by children in armed conflict definition, they should be 18 and below. But anyhow, we got data on children who were 12 at the time of the airstrike and what their medical needs were. So apart from Omar, whose case, is also funded by the Dutch public through charitable means, apart from him getting medical attention, we do have a list of 125 children who were 12 at the time who are yet to receive anything. So we just have a list. I believe the Ministry of Defense also gave an update to Parliament about it, but nothing's been done since then.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Ms. van der Werf.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, and probably asked the question to Ms. Tripp, to what extent were local victims and their representatives genuinely involved in the design and the selection and the implementation of the recovery projects, because the Ministry of Defense has always claimed that it was in direct consultation with the community, and I was wondering, how would you assess that claim?
Ms. Tripp.
Thank you. I think again I would defer to Sabah, who kind of has been engaged more with the local organisations on the ground.
How do you assess the Ministry of Defence's claim that the projects for the local victims, which have already been carried out, were in direct consultation with the community?
Ms. Azim.
We actually have a position paper on that as well, on the lessons learned, the community level responses to harm lessons learned from Hawija, which again was done after quite a bit of research in January, February of this year. Again, the people we've interviewed, and I also was there in January interviewing quite a number of people, were unaware that these were compensation projects or any benefit actually came to them. The trader union, they did not know. Apart from the Department of Electricity, Department of Municipality, Mayor's Office, the civilians did not know that these were in fact compensation projects. At the same time, we are unaware, we tried very hard to find out, but we are unaware of the selection criteria used by IOM for the cash for work projects, because whether they followed the cluster guidelines or whether they included a line that people who are directly impacted by the airstrike need to be prioritized, we were unable to find the criteria used.
Thank you. Mr. Albayati, would you like to add something?
Thank you. Regarding the engagement with the community, there is no any sharing or sitting with these, even the leaders of these family affected. As I mentioned previously, the UNDP and the IOM, when they are working and targeting, following their strategy, and there is no clear criteria or putting, as Sabah mentioned, this is one of the criteria, the vulnerability criteria, and adding for them the people who are affected by this incident. I think only the IOM sitting with the municipality, but when we meet, only the director of the municipality. No, this is part of the Dutch government supporters to these shops to rehabilitate them. But the shop owners, when we ask them, give us a copy of the contract between the IOM and the shop owner. I think Sabah have a copy of this contract. Didn't mention to any, this is the money or this is support is coming from like the Dutch government, and also when they are rehabilitated these shops, and also they didn't sitting with and doing at least market assessment in the humanitarian sector. They have to do a market assessment and meeting with this business owner and the shop owners and listen to their needs, what they have it, only signing a contract, and they are following also the IOM. They are following what they having in their construction department. They have their engineers who are estimately like creating the tenders. Sometimes doing some not needed rehabilitation for some building. They didn't. Yep, this is the point. Even when the head of the labor union, he mentioned also, as Sabah mentioned during the research that we did it in this year, January and February, they didn't include them. Also the electricity, they mentioned the Department of Electricity. They mentioned they didn't engage us during like bringing this the mobile station. They only came, the UNDP, and sitting with us and mentioned this is our tender and we have to do this work. They mentioned that we have additional needs. Yeah, they didn't agree to include them or add it to their tenders because they mentioned this is the tender that we have it and we have to do this work. And the different level, they have also one of the things they mentioned that we for the IOM mentioned that we are working on the demining and they mentioned that there is a director of demining in Kirkuk governorate or also in Hawija. When we went to Hawija, there is no directorate for the mine action in Hawija. Even in Kirkuk, they only the one in Baghdad, and when called with them, they mentioned no one from IOM came and mentioned to them because, as Sabah mentioned at the beginning, is needed to have like there is NTS non-technical survey and TS the technical survey. They have it to do all of this procedure to mention currently. This is from the mine action prospective program. They have to mention and reporting this is land is currently clear. They didn't do anything for this. Also for the civilian department, they didn't mention that didn't came to us. Also the community leaders, the tribal leaders, as I mentioned, they were following their strategy for this year for 2022 or 2023. They are following their strategy, implementing this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dijk.
Thank you. My question is for Ms. Tripp from Air Wars. In your position paper, one of the conclusions I draw is that Dutch defense didn't use information from third parties like local news about civilian victims. So my question is, in your opinion, what was the moment that it was clear that there were civilian victims?
Ms. Tripp.
Thank you for that question. I mean, we know that there were local reports from journalists within 24 hours. I mean, there was Rador, who is a Kurdish local outlet that was already on the scene. I think it was a couple of days after that you also had Al Jazeera, Reuters International reporting. We published our kind of assessment of all of the cases a few months after that, so I think in August 2015. And then, you know, as with many strikes and in many instances like this, you get more and more information as time goes on, particularly as kind of on-the-ground research can take place. So I would say it was clear very quickly, within a few days, that something enormous had happened and there were mass casualty events. And that indeed was backed up by the American assessment of the strike, you know, again, within that kind of 24 to 48 hour period.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking to my colleagues if there are any left questions. No? Then I want to thank our guests, Ms. Azim, Mr. Albayati and Ms. Tripp for their contribution. And I want to close the meeting. Thank you very much.